All right, you are listening to the Brown Perspective. This is Erreo, and I'm here with my good buddy Eduardo. Hey, how we doing?
What's going on?
Well, let's talk a little bit about the latest shooting in America. It's depressing stuff.
Yeah, this past weekend was rough. What was it, like five mass shootings
Yeah, there were.
across the country?
Yeah, the one in the Taiwanese church also that was in California,
Hmm.
and but I think this one was, I believe, one of the first, or the one that grabbed the most national attention. It was also the biggest one. And in this one, it's the mass shooting in Buffalo, New York, where 10 people were murdered and 11 of the victims were, well, it says 10 people were killed and three others were injured. So 11 of the victims were black. If I go here to the Wikipedia page, so the accused, an 18-year-old, wrote a manifesto because, of course, that's what you do. These guys try to write a manifesto to try to feel important, to try to make it seem like they're fighting a great cause, and they're leaving this manifesto for others to read it and help them awaken, in this case, to whatever they're peddling, in which case white supremacy is peddling the far right great replacement conspiracy theory, which is just funny because I think I've alluded to that in the past, to the replacement theory and what some conservatives try to peddle when they're talking about immigration, and when they're trying, I think in the past when we've talked about the elections. So at least this puts it in the forefront, and now a lot more people are also discussing what great replacement is. So I think we'll talk a bit about that.
Yeah, that is just sad because in addition to this killing in Buffalo, just thinking about the killing in Atlanta of the Asian uh, women in particular,
Mm-hmm.
the folks in El Paso who were also shot at, the Jewish synagogue that was shot up in Pennsylvania, Sikh temple, etc. So you see the pattern, and I know that oftentimes it's blamed on just one mentally ill person, but you at some point you have to realize that why are all these mentally ill people thinking the same thing and conducting and acting on this conducting these hate crimes. I think for this particular one, the fact that it targeted innocent people during the during a Saturday going about their business, that that I think that realizing that it is an act of domestic terrorism, that it is an act of driven by white nationalism, and I think that there's the fact that that was called out right away gives me hope that there's awareness of what the problem what the problems are and what's causing this type of hateful acts.
It certainly put the Republicans in a difficult place, because here you have Mitch McConnell condemning racism as abhorrent, but sidestepping the question about great replacement theory, because some of the members in the Republican Party, some of the conservative talking heads, Fox News, they've done dog whistle politics, where they've tried to promote the theories, if not with immigrants, also when they describe what's happening in Europe with the Muslim refugees. So yeah, this there's an intersection here with, again, we've talked a lot about freedom of speech in the past, which is certainly, there's freedom of speech, but there should also be some consequences. And I'm not saying consequences where you dispatch police officers to people's houses to try to question them based on what they said, but I mean, the consequences should come organically from the people themselves, so that the people that were peddling this are no longer elected. The Fox News should have a reduction in viewers as a result of these things, right? That's how you inflict consequences on people that use their speech for to promote these type of things that ultimately could be linked in one way or another to these outcomes. And I'll read a little bit about what great replacement theory is, and then we'll talk about it. Also known as replacement theory is a white nationalist far-right conspiracy theory disseminated by French author Renaud Camus. The original theory states that with the complicity or cooperation of replacist elites, the white European populations are being demographically and culturally replaced with non-white people, especially from Muslim majority countries, through mass migration, demographic growth, and a drop in the birth rate of white Europeans. I mean, right away, drop in the birth rate of Europeans. I think Europe achieved zero population growth back even before the year 2000. A drop in the birth rate is I'm not sure how they're linking it to some master plan from the elites, because if anything, a drop in the birth rate is more directly linked to capitalism and and people being treated as resources, and capitalism trying to extract as much labor from people so that you no longer have the ability to support a household with just one income. You need both parents to go to work just to sustain a family, and it gets more and more expensive to have kids under capitalism. So people tend to have fewer kids also. I mean, more educated people tend to have fewer kids, but also it gets way more expensive in a capitalist society, so just people have fewer kids as well. So not really sure how they link it there.
Well, they do because I think to them that's the easy thing to do. And for me, it's always amazing how it seems like the people with the least power, least political power in society are often blamed for some of those issues. But you make a good point that in many ways it is the consequence of colonialism, right? Those, I guess, those same elites who wanted to go and quote unquote discover other lands, conquer other lands to extract their resources. Um, they wanted to take those resources and that money back. And in the way they ended up having additional, creating additional subjects who became, for the most part, either citizens or residents of those empires. And then when they go back to Europe, when they go back to be part of the societies, then they're seen as a threat to what they stand for, right? So
Yeah.
it's interesting how we want places, resources, but we don't want the people that come with those resources.
Yeah, and another thing you reminded me as you were talking about this, that this is why parents and other people need to be careful and aware of the type of ideas and theories that are being taught to 18-year-olds, because when you're 18 years old, you may not have the ability to really reason through something like this, because let's just play devil's advocate here and say great replacement theory is true. All right, so there's a group of elites that want to replace the white European population. All right, well, these are elites, which are more than likely white elites, because that's where the wealth has been hoarded. Unless you want to start blaming Saudi Arabia and the House of Saud, right? And maybe they're your elites that are in cahoots here, but whatever, right? So just elites. All right, well, if the elites are trying to replace the white European population, and that means that all of the other white Europeans are just pawns in some master game, well, then what do you think the black people are? The black people in America? They're certainly not part of the elites. They're on the same boat with you. They're being played by someone else. So how does killing them in any way advance your cause? And again, this is the type of theory that when an 18-year-old hears it and they get really upset by it, this is why demagoguery is so effective, and why it's so dangerous as well, because once you get somebody pissed off, because of a theory like this, like, hey, the Europeans are being replaced, then it's really easy to then channel all that anger towards a scapegoat. And in this case, the scapegoats were the black people, which, if you're going to follow this theory and if you're going to think it all the way through, then they're just pawns, just like the whites that are being replaced. So, if anything, you should unite with them in this cause. Because, I mean, under what conceivable way can you present a reasonable argument that the ordinary black person is working hand in hand with these elites to replace whites, or the ordinary Muslim? There's just, right. So, but an 18-year-old mind is very easy to manipulate and to distort and to indoctrinate into this type of mentality, and then easily channel that anger towards a scapegoat.
So are you advocating for not having critical race theory in high schools, or?
Uh, Wait, how so?
No, explain.
Yeah.
No,
Oh no,
the
you should engage the. I'm not saying that you shouldn't expose these theories to 18-year-olds, definitely, but they need to be debated, uh, not in a vacuum. Because if all you're doing is reading in 4chan channels, in a 4chan channel or 8chan, with all these other people that are spewing the same vitriol, and you're not hearing an opposing view. And again, this is why freedom of speech is so important, because the best cure for hate speech is information and education, and having other people counter those, and point out how ridiculous some of these things are. Even if, like, you could say, all right, well, look, there's definitely some truth here. Uh, um, there's definitely have been waves of Muslims that have been migrating to Europe as a result of all the instability in the Middle East. But okay, well, then why is there so much instability in the Middle East then? Well, maybe the United States plays a part in that. Maybe because just greedy corporations and capitalists want to go there and extract resources. So maybe it's just that greed, and a side effect is that all these Muslims are going to Europe. And then you might say, well, why are they going to Europe? Why don't they go to Turkey? Why don't they go to Turkey, and because Turkey, and they're Muslim in Turkey, why don't they go to other Muslim countries? Well, I mean, that's not even a difficult question to answer either. The European countries are wealthier. So obviously you want to go where you think there's a better opportunity. You're already fleeing your country. You want to go somewhere where you think you're going to have, be welcomed in a way that's going to allow your family to be able to progress in that society. You may not necessarily want to go to neighboring Turkey if you don't think that that's going to provide an ideal environment for you. You'd rather go to the European countries, which still have that reputation of, at least like in America, where if you get there and you work hard, then there's a chance for you to advance your social status in society. So that's a no-brainer. That's like no different than the argument that says, how come Salvadorians or Hondurans or other Central Americans don't just go to Mexico if they're fleeing the civil violence in Central America? Well, why would they want to go to Mexico? It's easier, better to go to the United States. There's more opportunity there right now. And I mean, we can talk about why that is, right? The colonialism and all of that, and capitalism that's exploiting other nations. But the truth is, they're just going to go where they think there's more opportunity.
For sure. And I think, let's not forget that France and Britain and other countries, you know, did do their colonialism thing in Muslim and African countries. So was the expression, the chickens are coming home to roost?
Yeah.
So there's that. But I do think that, unfortunately, some people see the confirmation of a Supreme Court justice who is African American, having the first African American president, as validation to some of those points, right? So in some ways, while it's true that in the aggregate, um, Black people and other minorities are not even close to having true equal power in society, I think there's just enough signs for them to to look at as evidence as, oh wow, like look at them, they're succeeding, and here I am, myself and my family were struggling. And to your point, if it wasn't because of the way that race has been used to divide us, I think they would find more commonalities and the opportunity to work together to improve economic conditions in the education systems and the poor white and black, Latino, Asian areas where unfortunately they feel that they're being left behind by society, by the economy. And
Hmm.
right now we are struggling with inflation. We may hit a recession, possibly a depression. So there's going to be a lot of hurt. And ironically, there's the elitist populist folks are the ones that are trying to cause trouble and seize and also cause division and disrupt the system for their gain.
Yeah, and going back to what I said earlier, what is the benefit of taking out your misguided rage on a group of people that are themselves a victim of an oppressive society, of an oppressive capitalist system, right? This goes back again to the idea of the type of bubble that some white Americans live in, that you have here a community of black people that have struggled since slavery. You know, they've had to fight tooth and nail for their rights to be treated fairly, just to be recognized as equals. And all of a sudden, this 18-year-old white kid thinks there's a theory out there that he's going to be replaced by these people that have struggled tooth and nail to try to be considered equal. And then because of that, he feels so enraged that he goes and he kills people that are at more of a disadvantage than he is. You know, talk about a sense of privilege to think that you're entitled to do that. You write this huge manifesto, and the manifesto itself is an expression of him saying that I'm important. I'm more important than these other people. Is the arrogance of trying to present yourself that way, but also just a lot of unfortunately this poor 18-year-old. It's just a pawn again, misguided, thinking that he's fighting for a noble cause when in reality he's just confused, and somebody was able to radicalize him in a way that just made him out to be nothing more than a pawn. You know, I hope that these type of events don't become more common, because this is not the winning strategy if you want to unite against the true elites that own most of the land, that control most of the resources, that dictate the economic policies. You want to if you want to organize, you're going to have to work with black people. You're going to have to work with Native Americans, with Asians, with Hispanics, with some wealthy white people. Just doing this is just going to further divide you and further divide your groups. And pretty soon you're going to have all the groups going at each other's throat. So that's not a good outcome. Unfortunately, sometimes people don't learn that lesson until after the fact. So let's hope we don't go down that path.
Well, yeah, and I think speaking of historical lessons, I mean, to put this in perspective, it's only been what, about 100 years since Tulsa, Oklahoma, right? Black Wall Street, and some of the other massacres that happened around the turn of the century. In some ways, it was again a backlash, a reaction to seeing black people doing well in communities as a result of the black migration and,
Mm-hmm.
and seeking opportunity and being able to get to places where they were able to escape slavery in those awful conditions, move to areas where they could, work hard and sort of achieve the American dream. And there was a reaction, and there was a whole lot of people who not only burnt up cities and towns, but killed people and lynching and all those things. So in some ways, it's we had a historical precedent of that happening in the past, but in some ways, there's some progress that, as opposed to being a whole community that rises against other members of that community, is just one individual, but still that one individual, because of the weapons, because of the social media, can have such a tremendous damage, right? And not to say the 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 terrible impact of 10 lives lost, and so
Yeah.
many other lives that have been lost to this nonsensical violence, right? And like, how do you measure the human loss and the human potential that has been lost? I mean, you can't. And to your point, the only hope is that we do what we can so that more people don't think about this and don't resort to this type of violence just because they feel anger or fear about their own
Hmm.
economic futures.
Yeah, and one point on Tulsa, Oklahoma, that's probably the ultimate affront on a fragile, insecure white person to see a successful black man, because that's just that doesn't that doesn't compute in the world where they've been indoctrinated to believe that they deserve, that they're entitled to more than another human being just simply based on the color of their skin. So if you're an insecure, usually the root of racism is a lot of insecurity. So you have a fragile, insecure, you're fragile and insecure, then you're likely to harbor racist tendencies. And if you see a successful black person, then that just doesn't that just throws something off, because you've grown up to be conditioned to think that you're great and that black people are below you. So there's no way, like, under no, if like the world doesn't make sense if black people are doing better. So then that explains the burning down of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Like, all these people that didn't think that black people deserve that. So yeah, I guess to wrap this up, as you mentioned, unfortunately, one more shooting. There seems to be becoming a little more common, these racially motivated shootings. I don't think it'll be the last one. I think people should stay safe out there. I do think that it has shed more light on those that peddle these divisive theories like replacement theory. I don't think censorship is the answer. It'll just drive them underground. But I do think that it's important to have opposing voices also speak out against this. And I mean, but look, ultimately, the reason why these shootings make it worse is because, as you mentioned, the economic situation is deteriorating. And so if you have more people out there losing their jobs, more people frustrated and upset, it's so easy to present solutions to them and to tell them who the enemy is. So hopefully we don't get, because the next phase of this might be leaders that are running for office that are openly spouting this stuff. And there's so much frustration, there's so much economic hurt in the country that people will gravitate towards these demagogues. So, you know, uncertain times.
For sure. So be careful out there, people.
Yeah, stay safe. All right, we'll wrap this up. If you're out there enjoy our content, make sure to check us out. We are Brown Perspective. Nos vemos.
Ciao.